Well, welcome to another episode of the Business is Mission podcast, and I'm here with my new old friend, Rob Duncan. I say new old friend because I kind of feel like, Rob, I've known you for a long time, but I really haven't. And for for our listeners and then our viewers on YouTube, um, Rob's just that kind of guy. I mean, he just you get to know him very quickly. Not that he's simple. He's just easy. He's just a guy that invites you in and makes it easy to become a friend with. By way of introduction, Rob and I both work together for the Legacy Found. I get this mixed up all the time. The Legacy Generational Foundation. They changed the name a
Still
while back, and I still
take
can't
your
get it right.
membership card away.
I gotta go say, cut my paycheck in half. But the Legacy Generational Foundation, which is an investment foundation focused on funding businesses, mission startups, and scale ups around the world. That's Rob's just joined the board and will be taking over the day-to-day leadership of that. We met through IBEC Ventures, which is a part of the TriVenture network. So anyway, all of that. Rob, first of all, welcome. Thanks for being with us. Great to have you, man.
Hey, thank you. I'm absolutely honored to be here. This is quite a privilege for me. This is great. It's always great. You get to hang out with folks you've read their books and you love their speaking and their teaching and just the missions. And I think what unites us all together is when you have that same spirit and we're
Yeah.
driving in the same things. It does feel like you've met people forever and you've known them for a long time. So thanks for that very warm.
It's interesting. I do think that's right, and I have several friends in my life that I don't see that often, but whenever I'm with them, and it might be 5, 10, 15 years between meeting, and we'll spend a little time catching up, but very quickly we get into right now. And I'm convinced that it's the Spirit of God living in us, that we're all keeping in step with Him. So when we're together, it's like, yeah, okay, we're together. There's some details I might want, but really it's hanging out in real time. And you're for me, you've been like that already. So I appreciate that. So Rob, as we say, one of the things we always like to do on this show is to be able to just tell your story. How God worked in your life, how He led you into business and business's mission, and just whatever that looks like. It's always different for everybody. And one of the reasons we love stories, other than the fact that Jesus told stories, is that I'm convinced that the more people hear your story, my story, and other guys like us talking, they can begin to realize, I could do that. That's not superhuman. This may be something God has for me. So that's why we do this. So tell us your story. And then I know we got a particular topic. I'll go ahead for the listener's sake. We are going to talk about, um, because Rob is a financial planner, MBA, all this kind of financial wisdom, we are going to talk toward the end of our conversation about the things that have to do with retiring and quitting and the some of the misconceptions around retirement, but also about missional living with our financials. How do we use financial wisdom to be free to pursue those missional things God is calling us to do? So I'm really looking forward to that. But first, let's get your story and just tell us, who are you? Where'd you come from? How did you get
Sure,
here?
happy to do it. Look, I just crossed over kind of the mid-century mark here recently, which is kind of fun. My daughter likes to say it's just one step closer to the end, but which is it's good. Kids keep you humble, but look,
Daughters are good
yeah,
for
yeah,
that.
exactly. Look, I just feel like I'm still trying to figure out what I want to be when I grow up. So, maybe other people might resonate with that, but life's been a just a journey of learning and trying new things and just basically trying to just be faithful and follow where the Lord leads. And so we're going to go with that. So that's where we are. But to answer your question, let me go back. I was born in a Catholic household in New England, up in the Massachusetts area. So always, knew about God, but I would say at that point in time, never had a real relationship with Christ. Went to university in upstate New York. Not a Christian university at all. Had a very unchristian like experience up in college, like many folks. But interestingly, I had met this girl in high school. Actually, Mike, our little pre-chat, you mentioned Hilton Head, South Carolina. We'd met on the beach in Hilton Head Island, South Carolina, when we were on vacation. and anyways, had kept in touch with her for years. And she was honestly probably one of the first evangelical Protestants that I'd ever met in my life. And I knew that she had a faith and it was important to her. So long story short, we kept touch over the years and reconnected while I was in university, and ended up at the end of the day saying, okay, after I graduated, I'll move south. She was down in the southeastern part of the US. I said, I'll move south to see if this thing's going to work out, this relationship. So I packed up all my stuff, loaded in my car, drove, hours from Massachusetts down to Alabama, and ended up living in Alabama. And about a year and a half later, well, what do you know? We got married, and she is my wife today. So my wife was,
I think I've seen this
yeah,
movie,
exactly.
right? It's called Sweet Home Alabama
I
or
guess so,
something.
yeah. But it was, yeah, she's absolutely fantastic. She was, like I said, one of those first people that actually probably clearly proclaimed the gospel, clearly was an example of that you can be an authentic Christian and how you live this life out and what that looks like. And so that she was an amazing influence in my life. But I think coming down to the South as part of this process, I also started going to church. I also started going to, worship on a regular basis, being in this church. I remember walking out of service. She's, what do you think of service? I said, what's great, but doesn't everyone else feel gypped? Because I think he's just talking to me. And she said, that might be the Holy Spirit convicting you. I was like, well, what does that mean? So anyway, so we had a lot more conversations about it, but honestly, it was a group of men that I got involved with the church who took me into their group. We would read books together. We'd read the Bible together. We would pray. They were discipling me, and seeing how they went through life and dealt with all of the things that life throws at you, from financial challenges to terminal illness diagnoses to losing a child prematurely to just, life, right? Running a business, all of those things, and seeing them go through and do it with a grace and a dignity and an underlying peace and joy in their life. I recognized that they had something in their life that I didn't have. And so ultimately gave my life to the Lord, was baptized, and just the rest is kind of history from there. I fell into banking and finance. Honestly, I was in Alabama. I'm from Massachusetts. I was sweating my brains out. It was super hot. Someone offered me a job to work in a bank, and I was like, it's air conditioned. This sounds glorious. So I'll take it. It was a paycheck and benefits. So I started working in banking. My undergrad's not in business. It's in political science. So honestly, I kind of learned a lot of on-the-job training, and I just fell in love with business. I fell in love with finance. It clicked for me. It made sense. And I did well. I got recognized and was able to advance a little bit there. But very quickly within the first couple of years, I jumped from the banking side of the house, if you will, over to the investment side of the house, doing investment management, financial planning. So I've been doing that since 1998. Had a wonderful, wonderful time, wonderful career doing that for probably 16, 18 years until about 2014. And then in 2014, my wife and I decided that we needed to step into the world, step out and go do mission work overseas. And so we, in 2014, left my practice behind. My wife left her job behind. She was a professor, and we took our two kids at the time, 9 and 12, and went overseas and lived in Southeast Asia for 4 years. So had an absolute,
Fantastic.
yeah, a wonderful experience there. And one thing you mentioned is, how to use your business background on the mission field. I remember literally sitting there in a conversation with someone saying, can you even use a guy like me? All I know is finance. All I know is investment. I know business. That's all I know. Can you use me on the mission field? And, honestly, I felt like going into an area that was incredibly unreached. It was almost like being a financial advisor, right? I mean, I gotta find people and put myself in their path, get to know them, talk to them, build up trust, and see, and sell this invisible thing here, right? That is faith. When you start talking to,
well, that's an interesting thing to bring up, Rob, when you think about how, because that was 2014-ish, and here we are just, 10, 11 years later, how much has changed in the world of global mission to the point that today they'd be like, please, can I see you? Can I talk to you? 10 years ago, like, well, we're not sure what to do with you. So how fast this movement has
Yeah,
accelerated.
we were super excited. Actually, one of the things that came up, I remember saying, talking to the people in the organization that we were going through, phenomenal organization, loved it. But at the time, I said, look, I'm thinking of maybe I'll keep some clients and I'll be able to kind of manage them remotely, and I can do this. And they were like, no, no, no. If you're called, you'll get rid of it all and go. And I was like, okay, and I did that. But had I come into the pipeline probably about a year and a half, 2 years later, um, maybe not even that far, there would have been an opportunity where they would have said, absolutely, let's figure out a way to get this, make this happen. Let's go ahead and do this. So, again, organizations evolve and change and evolve over time. And our whole team on the field, we ended up being a big global city. We ended up having all marketplace professionals on my team that were non fully funded, fully sent people through our organization. So they were, kind of grafted into our organization. But I had, BAM entrepreneurs who were starting businesses. I had their spouses who were, working in organizations. I had people that were working for large global corporations. I had a retired pharmaceutical executive who was absolutely fantastic. So, all of those people with lots of different backgrounds and skills coming together to really flesh out this team to engage, this city, this area through the marketplace. It was a lot of fun.
Rob, you sound like the poster child. Like y'all need to put a billboard up of all these people
Yeah.
because that is, in a very real sense, the call of business's mission is that you don't have to go to seminary, you don't have to go to Bible college. You can, there's nothing wrong with it, but there are other pathways to fully engaged missional activity, and these are all professionals. And what a picture that is of the whole body of Christ, as the Lausanne movement, what they say, the whole gospel to the whole world through the whole church. It's like that's what you just
Yeah,
described.
it was phenomenal. And seeing those people, a lot of people, a lot of the full-time missionaries I engaged with, some other people on our, on our org, I would meet them at conferences and they would say, oh, you just, number one, you just want to work with wealthy people, or, okay, these marketplace people come over, they're making a ton of money, and they're going to work 50, 60, 70 hours a week, but then when are they going to do missions? And I'm like, no, you don't get it. I'm like, it's different. And so, like, one family, they took a 40% pay cut to come overseas because their company in the US said, fine, we'll transfer you over there. We'd love to have you work over there, but we're not paying you your American salary in a country where the cost of living is, 40, 50% less. So we're going to cut you. So, he took a pay cut, and then he had to send his kids to international school, which was an additional cost that he didn't have in the States because he was sending them to public school. So, it's not this, it's not what everyone thinks it is. But he came on board, and the first week I met with him, he had just landed in country. He was working. I said, hey, how things going? We met for lunch. I was expecting him to say, like, it's really hot. I'm trying to get used to the living here, cultures, all the stuff that's different. He came in. He's like, okay, I got someone in my office who's a Hindu. How do I share the gospel with a Hindu? I mean, he's on fire. These people are doing missions every single day. He was kind of a geek. He had a spreadsheet and he laid out everyone in his office. He said, this is my mission field. I have 120 people that work in my office. And he laid out, their background, their ethnicity, their primary language, their religion, if he knew it. If they were Christian, were they going to a church? Were they being discipled? I mean, he had it all laid out, and he was actively trying to engage with all of these people on a regular basis. It was phenomenal. Um, he got invited to go away for holidays with his neighbors or with his coworkers that I never got invited to go to because there was no suspicion as to who he was. He was an employee. He worked there. Of course, he was a Christian because he was from America. Everyone in America is a Christian, right? And but they were fine with that. They invited him on the holidays. For me, it was always this: we don't understand why you're here because you don't work. What are you doing? And so that was always a challenge that I wrestled with. Um, so I'm talking too much, but I had a guy who literally grilled me at a birthday party for his son. We were my son and his son had become friends at our apartment complex, and this guy's uncle grilled me, and he's talking to me in the local language, and he's saying, "You live here in this building?" Yes. Your kids go to the international school? Yes. Do you have a car? Yes, I have a car. Your wife works? No, I don't. She doesn't work. You work? No, you don't work. What did you do in the States? I mean, like, I'm getting, like, the lamps on me. I'm starting to sweat. I can get an interrogation. And he basically said, how are you doing it? He said, it's going to cost you X amount to live here. You can't live like a local like I can. How are you doing it? It just never made sense. And so I felt like until I had that authentic story, there was always going to be some barriers to our relationship, and that was going to be a hindrance to the gospel. So
Well, imagine, I mean, put the shoe on the other foot. Imagine somebody moving into your neighborhood in Alabama who's from another country and doesn't have any visible means of support, doesn't work, lives well. You're going to wonder. You know, you may not think the worst, but you're certainly going to think, what's this guy
Yeah.
about? And so it's the same thing, right? And so again, that another commercial for business is mission. But when you're a professional, owning a business, starting a business, working in a business, doing something that people can
Yes.
understand, a lot of those barriers just go away. And now, you know, you can live out the gospel, and they will ask you about it because they will. They're very curious. So what happens after that? So you're starting to see this. You didn't stay there all that. You came back. Is that about the time you came back for a while, or?
Came back in at the end of 2018. Honestly, we were back on stateside. We thought maybe we were going to go back overseas. We were actively exploring other options. And my wife got offered a job in Southern California, which is where we're based right now. So honestly, it was a confluence of factors that led us to prayerfully decide that it was time for us to stay back in the States. And I think the Lord and his timing is really, really good. And COVID hit the next year. Our country really locked down where we would have been there. That would have been very challenging. There was a very high probability that we could have been back in the States during that time period and just sort of been in this flux period. So I think, look, the Lord was in it, and it allows us to be back here. My wife and I are both only children as well. And so we've got parents that are getting a little bit older. And so we need to be around to care for them as well. So it was a confluence of factors that led us to be back in the States. So it was the right decision at the right time. The Lord actually gave us a few months later after we got back, he gave us the ability to lead a team of university students from my wife's university back to the country that we served in. So it kind of gave us a little bit of extra closure after that decision and really tied it together. So,
How
yeah, the
cool.
Lord's sweet. It was very
Yeah.
nice. Um, yeah,
So the story continues because you have lots of steps in here. What happened next? I'm very
yeah.
curious.
So, actually, back in the States, thought I was done with finance. Actually, I'd finished up. Obviously, I left my practice behind when we went overseas. I did get licensed to be an advisor in the country that we were in, by the way, for a brief period of time. As I did some consulting with a small independent financial advisory firm in our city. Which actually, when I had that business card, and I'd walk around and I'd give people that business card, or I'd meet someone and say, "Hey, what do you do?" "Oh, here's my card. I do some consulting." The conversations were totally different. So I got to experience it for a brief amount of time. It didn't quite work into what we were doing organizationally, so it didn't quite fit long term. But I definitely think it could have. Had I gone down a different pathway with it. But anyways, came back to the States, thought I was done with finance. I'd finished up my MDiv while on the field. Was launching into a PhD program. And was interviewing at churches. I thought it'd be like sort of executive pastor, missions pastor, things like that. And then the Lord just kind of kept closing those doors for really good reasons. And the doors, I would get right down to the end, and something would come up and change, and the door would close. Get a little frustrated. I remember wrestling with the Lord one day, saying, "Lord, look, if you want me to go back into finance, I will. But if it could be kingdom enhancing, that would be great." I thought it was good to put conditions on God, see if he does that. But I said, "Look," I said, "I'm not smart."
I'll give an extra 1% of my tithe if you'll do this
Yeah,
for me, right?
I said, "Look, I'm not smart enough to figure this out." I said, "But you're gonna have to open the doors." And literally, like 2 or 3 days later, I get a phone call from an organization that I had not applied to. Someone in our area, in our network, had passed my resume on. He said, "Hey, had your resume for a few months. We've been praying through it. We think you may be what we're looking for." And so I ended up working with a Baptist foundation out here in California. I didn't even know what the heck a Baptist foundation was, but we jumped in, learned a lot, and did a lot of institutional asset management for them. Served as chief investment officer for several years. Had a wonderful time. Great organization. Managing assets for churches and faithful individuals through charitable giving and charitable trust and all that sort of stuff. So just some great families and great churches doing great work. So it was a ton of fun. That gave me a lot of experience in the redemptive investing space as well, and as sort of the faith-driven investing space too, to be able to say, okay, how do we build these portfolios that are God-honoring, that make some money, that are that perform really well, but how do we also do it in a way that honors the Lord when we deploy capital? So that was really exciting. And then I think it was in 2023, end of 2023, just really started to get the itch with my wife, with our family, as to what we wanted to do long term and what that really wanted to look like. And so took the leap of faith and left the foundation. That was a hard decision, but left the foundation and decided to start all over again and start building a financial advisory practice again. So launched my own practice, Global Impact Wealth Management, at the end of 2023, and been doing that ever since.
So give us the website. It will be in the show notes. Not that you'll turn clients away. So let's get that in there. So globalimpactwealth.com, right? That's the website. And this you are taking on clients, or your team is taking on clients? Okay, fantastic. So listeners and viewers, this will be in the show notes. If you have an interest in a kingdom-minded, godly investment guide, investment manager, and he's been doing this work for a long time, so Rob knows what he's doing. We'll check it out. That is our commercial. That's our commercial for you. But that's good because you're still doing what God's gifted you to do, and you started doing that a couple of years ago. Now bring us up to the foundation. How did this come about, and what are your ambitions for that new
Yeah, I
role,
think
or that additional role, I should
Yeah, I
say?
think it all ties together. I mean, with the practice, the reason we wanted to set the practice up is my wife and I and our family, we were really trying to figure out, well, how can we um, be financially flexible so that we can live missionally, right? And not just financially flexible, but geographically flexible as well. How can we live in such a way that we can kind of live wherever we want to live, partially so we can, again, care. We've got family all over the country here. So how can we care for them as they age? That's our
Hmm.
responsibility and our obligation. But also, is there a possibility for us to be able to be potentially overseas for 2-3 months of the year, or in blocks of time, where we can go overseas, drop in someplace, support some folks on the ground, but yet I can still run my business remotely from there and be connected that way. So that's kind of what we're looking for. You know, that's why I started the business, what I was doing. And sorry, Mike, my brain just left. You asked me another question that was tied on to that, and I forgot it now. Um,
Just try that. It's kind of moving from there
oh, the
into
foundation,
now
yeah.
the
Yeah.
additional role of the
So
foundation.
wanting to be
Yeah.
missional and all that. So we want to be missional with our own lives, but I really want to be connected also into the BAM world. And so I was doing research through my PhD, through my doctoral program, looking into that as well. So I said, how can I be more connected with this? And I want to be connected with some BAM professionals. And so connected with IBEC Ventures, starting with Bob Bush, with you guys, and started connecting. So served as a coach with IBEC Ventures, which has been absolutely fantastic. Getting to actually talk with BAM practitioners who are on the ground, struggling, trying to figure out how to make their enterprise work, has been awesome. So just to be able to be a support and encourager, ask a lot of questions, maybe point people in directions, give some resources, that's been tremendous. And then through that, Bob introduced me to a couple other people to jump on with the Legacy Generational Fund. And I've had some experience again with lending, with faith-driven lending, and investing on that side of things. So it was just a natural fit, I think, as far as with the foundation of the fund. So we're really excited about where that can go and how we can provide capital to businesses in those very early stages when they get off and around. It's just such they need that funding.
So let me set this in a little bit of context again for our listeners and for our viewers. The Legacy Generational Foundation is the third piece of an organization, or really an alliance we call TriVenture, and it's made up of Third Path Initiative, which is online businesses mission education, and that's just to help people understand where they're going, get create business plans, those sort of things. And then the second piece of it, IBEC Ventures, that Rob alluded to, where he's one of the coaches, is their role is coaching, not just mentoring, but coaching for a purpose, coaching to grow, coaching to gain funding, coaching to impact spiritually. So they provide that piece of the puzzle. We always say is courses, coaching, and capital. And the third piece of this triangle came into being through a couple of guys, Dick Widener and Stan Bachman, who are wonderful, wonderful guys. But they, as they would tell you, they've been at this a long time, and they needed a successor. They needed somebody to come in and say, I'll take this on, and I'll gradually take it off your shoulders and lead it going forward. And that's where the group basically reached out to Rob, and long story short, everybody said, yes, this is right. This is a God thing. Let's go with it. And I'm excited to work with you in that capacity, and I know we need it. I'm on the board as well, part of TriVenture, and as well as part of the foundation. And we need what you bring to the table. So that's really exciting. tell it real quickly. Then I want to get to the sort of hot topics of the day. But what coming into it, because you're fairly new to it, you know what you're doing, but you're new to this group. What are your ambitions? Maybe it's dreams is a better way to say it for the foundation. Where do you see it going, and what could it be?
Yeah, I mean, I think again, I tend to be kind of a nuts and bolts and in the weeds kind of person a little bit, and so I'm right now I'm sort of thinking of like the mechanics of it, like how do we get this thing up and running so that it's a very efficient, well run machine. And we know we can take in those applications from those. We got a pipeline of businesses that want to come in, so how do we get those businesses through that pipeline? How do we learn about them? How do we make sure we're, as a board, making good decisions as to where to deploy capital? And then how do we get those dollars out to these businesses in a timely manner so they can use them in the most effective way possible? And then how do we again, create sort of an ecosystem where we can help give them the funds, but stay on top of them, stay in contact with them, make sure they're putting those funds to good use, and then also telling the stories of all the great things that God's going to do through those funds hitting the ground, through those businesses being launched, through those businesses being revitalized. But how can we tell those stories about the successes and how God's working? And then just we'd like to see that multiply. I mean, I think God's a creating God that loves multiplication. And so if we can find a way that we can multiply that, that's what we'd like to do. And part of it is operationally, how do we set up a foundation and a fund that makes it easy for funds to come in and easy for funds to go out. And again, the nice thing about doing loans to these businesses is it's perpetual. We lend out for a season, they succeed, they send those dollars back to us, and we, pass that on to the next group out there. So that's kind of the vision. We just want to be running really well, really efficiently, godly, transparently, so that we can see more and more businesses be funded.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, those of you who listened to the podcast recently heard the story of Alex Samuel from Tanzania. He is one of the beneficiaries of this program, and he's the kind of person that Rob's talking about. Alex's story, and if you haven't heard it, go. It's just came out in, I want to say, early April. Listen to it. It's a wonderful story. Humble guy with a passion for serving the people around him. Created a soap company, not exotic, just a soap company, but it's making a huge social impact, gospel impact. This guy he made more money in profit in 6 months than he borrowed by 50%. That's a pretty good start. And so those are the stories we want to hear. And this again, for listeners, there's more and more interest, and I thank God for this, in the larger loans and larger investments, venture capital, angel investor types, hundreds of thousands of dollars, and I thank God for that. But there's also globally a huge need for the smaller loans, and that's where this foundation comes in, the 15, 20, $30,000 loans. No, they're smaller. I get that. But so one guy said, "Well, is micro business a real business?" I said, "Yeah, it's just small, but it's real business, and the people who do it tend to be more integrated with their community than some of the bigger businesses that are formed out there. So there's a place for this. Is kind of
Yeah,
where I'm
absolutely.
going
We
with.
were talking with one business, and again, we kept talking about the business and a great concept, great ideas, and we said, "All right, but have you started selling yet? Have you started getting the products in? Have you started moving this forward? Where are we, really to see proof of concept that this is actually going to work?" And he was just struggling to get that initial capital in the door. And had he had a small loan to get that initial capital in, we could have had proof of concept that then when he went to the Lion's Den or something like that and made the pitch, he'd say, "Yeah, I've been doing this. I got an initial capital injection. We were able to bring products to market. We were able to execute. It's working. We just need more to scale." And
That's why we call it an ecosystem, right? Everybody has a role to play, and I don't look at anybody else in this network globally, and it's huge, and say, you're not needed. It's a kind of passage out of Corinthians where Paul says, the hand can't say to the foot, "I don't need you," right? I mean, I do. I need the foot. I need the hand. I need the eye. And so all of us, and we're back to where we began. All of us have a role in this. So that's kind of Rob's story through today. We're getting back next week to tell the next chapter. But so topic of the episode. We don't always do this, but you threw out some ideas. I thought I cannot let this go slide by. But one of the things I wanted to talk about, you've got some, you talk about FFLM, and you can explain that, and then FIRE, FIRE, and these have the reason I want to go there, Robin, the rest of our time together is these have a message. These speak to men and women who are in their career and maybe drawing to the close of their career, not quite sure what to do next. These things speak to a large population of business people around the world who love the Lord, who want their life to have kingdom impact, but they're kind of, I think they're falling into a bit of a trap that says, okay, you're done. Punch your card and go to the locker room. We'll get the next
Yeah.
guy in here.
Yeah, I think the fire movement right now, that financial independence, retire early, that I think is actually getting a lot of young folks too, right? So they're getting young folks who want to, let me save and I'll basically not spend anything for all this time, build up this nest egg so I can retire early, so I can get out. And so to me, one level, wow, that's sort of appealing, but on the other level, I'm like, is that really what God calls us to do? What are we retiring from? Are we even supposed to really retire per se? Is that a biblical concept that we see? So I wrestle with that an awful lot. I wrestle with the independence portion of it. Are we as faith-driven people supposed to ever be truly independent, or are we? I think we're really supposed to be like interdependent, right? We're dependent on each other. We're dependent on the Lord. We're dependent on a lot of things to succeed in life, and what does that success look like? So so I like the concept of, kind of like I said, being financially flexible to live missionally. How can I structure, me and my family, whatever, structure our financial life in such a way that regardless of which way the Lord wants to call us, or do something, we can move in that direction. We're totally living open-handed to be able to do that. Now I know there's an element of it where we should probably be able to say that regardless, right? I wish I could say maybe my faith was strong enough that the Lord's calls, I'll be willing to do it. But I think at some level, there's always an element people come back and say, I can't do that. I'm just not ready financially. So how can we, with God's help, prayerfully structure our finances in a way that gives us that ability to say, yeah, God, wherever you want me to be. If you want me to pack up and move to Topeka, Kansas to go along with a church plant, I'll go. If you need me to move across the world, I'll go. If you need me to stay right where I am and just do something differently, that's fine. I'll do that too. Like, just, it doesn't mean we have to do something, but how can we be flexible enough and structure things in a way that allow us to be responsive to the urgings and leadings of the Lord?
I think about as you're talking, Rob, I think about Jesus and saying, there's three different case studies where he says to one guy, follow me. And he says, well, hey, I've just bought a horse or just bought a field. Let me go check on it. So he's not ready, right? But the Lord said, I want you to come with me. But he didn't. He could have, but he didn't. Another guy says, I need to bury my father. I mean, these all three of these studies, and I can't cite the passage. I'm pretty sure it's in Luke somewhere, but I'm like the author of Hebrews. It says somewhere, right? And to me, all of those guys speak to all of us that say it's pretty rare for the Lord to say, "Hey, pick up, go," and that's the end of it. But it does happen, and I don't want to say it doesn't. It does. But the idea that I'm not even considering it, I'm not even open because I'm quote not ready. And I think so. This idea, what this F? Let me get this right here. I'll look at it. Say it correctly. FFLM, financial flexibility to live
Yeah, it doesn't
missionally.
roll off the tongue. I wanted to come up with this. So I kind
No,
of
it
look.
doesn't. We got it. Did you
I
make
have
that
no
up?
idea. I don't want to step on anybody's toes if they came up with it before me, but maybe. But I like the fire movement just rolls off the tongue. Everyone wants to be on fire, right? So maybe I said maybe the film movement, financial interdependence to live missionally. I was like, okay, that sounds a little bit better, but financial flexibility, whatever you want to do, it's fine, it's good. But you were talking about like people of different generations too, and I think as we go through life, like, look, I'm middle age. There was a book that was written a little while ago in 2016 called The 100-Year Life. I don't believe it's written from a faith perspective, but it's basically talking about the mechanics of living and retiring, and that we're living longer. And so the old concept of you educated, you worked, and then you retired, may not work anymore for folks, right? Just because pensions have gone the way of the dinosaur, the risk has been put on individuals and families to save for their own well-being in retirement. So how do we navigate that? So the concept is more you educate, you work, you re-educate, entrepreneurship, new ventures, second half, work again, and then even retirement is not a full retirement. It's more of a step down retirement, part-time work, volunteer work, and partially this is so beneficial just because we're living longer. We have to stay engaged. People who've walked away from their careers and suddenly they have nothing to fall into, and that it weighs on you socially, emotionally, spiritually, all of those physically. Um, yeah, who am I? Especially for men, our identity a lot of time is in our vocation and what we do. And so to be able to kind of sort of, stage this out properly and think through this, I think is really important for folks. And again, being on the field and seeing the benefit of having older folks who had worked their careers, were incredibly successful, come over and say, I'm not done. And here's where we're going to be, especially in a lot of cultures where maturity and older folks are revered and are um, welcomed and are sought after a lot more than our US culture, where we think everything needs to be new, young, and do it. I mean, I saw lots of people, young women sitting at the feet of older women, just learning from them, younger guys, entrepreneurs sitting at the feet of, an older business person who has been incredibly successful, and be able to say, yeah, here's how you honor the Lord with your wealth. Here's how you honor the Lord through your business. Here's how you do this. Now let's, pouring into these people. It was absolutely tremendous. It was a beautiful thing to see. And you can do that internationally. You can do that domestically too. There's a great need.
So let me ask you this question. Let me ask you this question on that because you just struck something with me. I think a lot of us, because I'm about 20 years older than you are, and you're not a young
I'm
man,
not.
as your daughter would
I'm
point
not.
out. but, but I think we would like to have people sitting at our feet to listen to our wisdom someday, but they don't. And part of it is here's my thesis, my sort of theory on this is uh, maybe it's because we're not available. It's not that they aren't respecting us, it's we're not there. We're in the retirement home. We're at the villages in Florida. We're, cruising the Viking cruise up and down the Rhone River. I mean, we're not there for them to get to know and ask. I don't know if that's true, but something in me says there's more truth to that than I want to admit, which speaks to where you're going. This retire from what to
Yeah,
what? Um,
exactly.
so give us some specifics. We'll wrap up here with this. I want people to. I really want. I'd love, first of all, we need to talk more about this. This is big, and with the aging of America, it's huge in our world. The baby boomers. I'm a dead center baby boomer. I'm 70 years old, and I'm right in the middle of that. And we are retiring to the tune of tens of thousands a day are leaving the American workforce. Now that's a problem that's a problem economically for our country. It's also a problem sociologically for us and for the church. Where are these folks going? They're disengaging. You're saying don't. So give us some very concrete things that an aging person, believer with a heart for
Yeah.
God, uh, can think about.
I mean, I think you look, we just did a while back a series in our church, and we had people from different generations speak about generations and where they see it. And our senior pastor emeritus was a phenomenal guy, and he spoke on from the boomer perspective, and he said, what do we need to do? And one of the things he said was, we need to stay engaged with people. They want to hear from us. The younger generation wants to hear from us, and like I said, we need to be available. But I also think we need to insert ourselves a little bit or offer that up a lot. Sometimes they won't come to us and say, hey, I'd like to talk to you about this. I think we need to say, hey, look, if I can be a resource for you while you're building your career, I've done some things. I know things have changed. Maybe things are a little bit different now, but I might have a little bit of experience. I'm at least willing to listen. And if I'll buy you lunch or buy you coffee. If you want to, just talk to me about it, I'll be glad to be a sounding board for you. Can I be a resource for you? And I think just offering it that way is great. There's nothing wrong with it, like golf. Again, the senior pastor emeritus, He loves golf. He took my son out golfing. My son's 19, 20 years old. They went out and played golf together. My son still talks about it. He's like, I love playing golf with Tom. I want to go play golf with Tom again. Okay, great. You know, I think there's just so many opportunities to do it. And just in that life on life interaction, you can drop those little seeds in. You don't have to teach a course. You don't have to preach a sermon. It's just listening, asking the right question, asking lots of open-ended questions. What are you struggling with? What are you dealing with? How are you seeing God work in this? You're in this career path. That seems to be really challenging. Tell me about that. Just learn, be a learner about what people are going through. And I think that's the big thing, especially couples get together with younger couples and pour into them. We're having so much fun. We're leading a young married group at our church, and we absolutely love them. They're so great. They're great. They're awesome. We get life listening to them. And so there are lots of different ways to get involved. Talk to your church and say, hey, are there some younger, I'm in business. I've been in the marketplace for a while. There's some younger entrepreneurs or business people in the church that can we start up a group. There's faith-driven entrepreneur groups, there's faith-driven investor groups, there's things you can start in Bible studies that you could do. How could we lead a group to get people to think through some of these ideas from a biblical perspective a little bit more?
Rob, as I'm listening to you, I was thinking about a podcast I listened to maybe a year or so ago. It was from True Face. Robbie Angle was leading it, and the guy that was the guest, I can't remember his name. I need to find it because he said some great things. But he was talking about different phases of life, and that most of us, we get stuck in the doing phase. And that's great. There's a period of time when you're doing, earning, we talk about prime earning years, all that's very real. But then he talked about what comes after that, and most people don't make the turn. They just keep going straight. They keep doing when they're meant to turn and start advising
Right.
and mentoring, coaching, not so much doing. And again, it's a step down. It's not stop everything, right? But it shift your emphasis a little more into that mentoring. But then he said there's something after that, and this is where I'm really my mind is being exercised a lot. Is he talked about a phase of just simply being.
Yeah.
It's just being present. Mm-hmm. And so at my age, honestly, I'm thinking a lot about this, and it matters to me. I don't want to fade off in the sunset. I don't want to go out in a nuclear explosion either. I want to matter till God is done with me. And when he says, those works I prepared beforehand for you, yeah, well, they're done.
Yeah.
Okay. Until then, I want to be active. And so I think about when you look at this, the fire versus the film. I like that. That's easier to remember. And it's not just financial. You're really talking. I mean, financial things impact your ability to advise, and so on. But it really seems like it's more of a mindset. And I'm going to pitch you a question, and then we'll kind of come in for a landing here. It seems to me that so much of financial management, we think it's so technical, and it is. Don't get me wrong. We need guys like you that have the technical knowledge, but it seems like it's more mindset than it is technical understanding.
Yeah.
Is that right? Am I totally crazy?
I mean, I think it's a little bit of both, and I think when I think what you're getting at is the fact, like, is also this concept of purpose and figuring out what your purpose is. And a lot of people think that a guy named John Coleman wrote a great book called Crafting Your Purpose. It's a Harvard Business Review book. It's really good. John's a super strong believer, great guy, works at Sovereign's Capital, which is a phenomenal firm out there in the redemptive investing space as well. But he talks about that we have multiple purposes, and we need to craft our purpose, and that our purpose is going to change over time and through seasons of life. And so I think it's now like, all right, my purpose at this stage of life was X. Well, now I'm transitioning into this different stage of life. How do I craft my purpose again? And what is it? And embrace that purpose. And then when you align your purpose, or when you really know your purpose, then you know how to align your finances, right? And then you say, well, how do I structure my finances to get me closer to achieving that goal? And then the technical stuff falls into place. That's just, like I said, it's, those are, like you said, those are the nuts and bolts. That's not a big deal. If you were, yeah.
Well, I would differ with you. From my perspective, to you, it's not a big deal. To me, it's a very big deal because I don't understand it. So some of you is like, yeah, okay, whatever. You give me the P, that, but it is a big deal. But I think it's certainly the both.
Yeah.
And what's the name of the book? We'll put that also in the show
Yeah,
notes.
yeah.
Crafting Your
It's called Crafting
Purpose.
Your Purpose. It's a Harvard Business Review book on crafting your purpose. And John Coleman, awesome book.
Fantastic. Guys, we'll put it in the show notes as well because we're all, whether you're young or middle aged or you're aging a bit, we're all the goal of all of this business's mission at its very heart is simply to walk with Christ in what he's doing in the world. And if I'm a business guy, then that's business's mission. If I'm a medical guy, that's medical mission. If I'm a theologian, that's theological mission. I mean, but it's all, as Larry Sharp, our good friend, says all the time, it's missio Dei, not missions. It's missio Dei. What is God doing? What is the mission of God? And we get a chance to join in. All right. So Rob, thank you. I always like to give the guests the last word before I kind of do the normal sign off stuff. Any last word of advice, challenge, wisdom, confession to our audience?
Yeah, I no, just don't wait. Don't get stuck doing just something. I've met so many people over the years who they didn't plan, they didn't think about it. Someone came to me and he said, "We never planned our life." He goes, "I just kept working. I got a job and I just worked and I just did it day after day after day. You know, faithful people, godly people, but they just felt like they kind of got into this rut." And I think it's well worth us to take a step back, maybe multiple times a year, at least once a year, kind of say, "God, where do you really want me to be? Where do you want us to be as a family? What are you laying on our hearts? How are you convicting? What can we do?" And then if that's different than what we're doing now, then what do we have to do to put that in place and make that a reality? Because if that's really where God's leading you, don't don't not do that, right? I mean, the worst thing to do would be to get at the end and say, "Man, I think I missed so many opportunities along the way to really go in this direction and step out in faith and what God wanted me to do, or to step out in faith, do what God wanted to do." I mean, if you told me that I was to leave my career, we were doing just fine, life was really good, and to leave that and make 10% of what we made and go be on the mission field, I mean, that'd be crazy. Why would we want to do that, right? But I mean, it was absolutely the best decision, and God's faithful, and He opened up so many doors through that other opportunities to do different things. I don't know whether I'm better off financially for it, but I think I'm much better off as a human being for it, and I'm glad that we had this opportunity. So not every decision is going to be the best financially, but it's going to be. I think it's if you're pursuing what the Lord wants you to do at every stage of our life, life's good.
Yeah. Okay. What a great bunch of advice there at the end,
Sorry,
Rob. Thank you for that.
there's a lot going.
No, we're glad. Thanks for joining us, and I look forward to many years of being able to work with you in Business as Mission through the foundation and other avenues, IBEC Ventures. You're into so many things, and you bring so much to the table.
Appreciate
I'm glad I got to know you. I'm glad you're my friend and my brother.
Right back at
So,
you. Thank you.
so to the listeners, if you haven't liked or followed the program yet, please do that. One thing I heard a guy ask recently, he said, if you're there, put a comment in there. Let us know you're there. It does matter to know there are really people who listen to what we're doing. So please do that. Share it with a friend if you would. And if you are interested at all in supporting the work of the podcast and defraying expenses, you can do so through buymeacupofcoffee.com or patreon.com, either way. But the main thing we want you to do is just dig in, as Rob just said. Ask the question, Lord, what do you have for me? And some of you already know the answer, so be encouraged in that. Some of you are just asking, be encouraged in that. And some of you haven't dared to ask yet, be encouraged in that. Because this is a God thing globally. Billy Graham said many years ago that he thought the next great movement of God in history would be through the marketplace, through the business world. And I think he was right. And I think we're now seeing that. So come on in. That's always our message. Rob, thanks so much. So good to
My
have
pleasure.
you.
Thank you so much.